In 1956, Isaac Asimov wrote a story that still haunts readers 70 years later. It's called The Last Question, and it's not about aliens or robots or space battles. It's about something far more disturbing: the inevitable heat death of the universe, and humanity's desperate attempt to escape it. The story spans trillions of years, follows humanity from Earth to the stars, to dimensions beyond comprehension, and asks one question over and over: can entropy be reversed? Can the universe be saved from its inevitable end? The answer comes at the very end, and it's not comforting. It's terrifying, because what Asimov revealed isn't just about the cosmos. It's about consciousness, about existence, about what it means to live forever in a universe designed to die. But before we explore that story, we need to understand something darker, something Asimov explored throughout his career: the horror of immortality itself. Because Asimov didn't write about eternal life as a gift. He wrote about it as a curse, a prison, a fate worse than death. And in story after story, he showed why living forever might be the cruelest thing that could happen to a conscious being. If you think you want to live forever, if you believe death is the enemy and immortality the solution, then you need to hear what Asimov discovered. Subscribe to the Hidden Codex. Turn on notifications, because what we're exploring tonight will change how you think about life, death, and the terrible space between them. This is the dark side of eternity, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Isaac Asimov was born in Russia in 1920, immigrated to America as a child, became one of the most prolific writers in history, over 400 books, spanning science fiction, science fact, mystery, history, theology. He could write about anything, explain anything, make the complex comprehensible and the impossible seem inevitable. But beneath all that clarity, all that scientific optimism, there was something darker, a recognition that knowledge brings no comfort, that understanding the universe doesn't make existence easier, that seeing clearly might be the worst curse of all. And nowhere is this darker vision more apparent than in his explorations of immortality. Most science fiction treats immortality as desirable, the ultimate achievement. Conquer death and you've won. You have infinite time, infinite possibilities, infinite existence. But Asimov saw something else. He saw that time itself becomes torture when it never ends, that consciousness becomes a burden when it can't stop, that existence without termination is existence without meaning. Let me show you what he discovered. In his story, The Bicentennial Man, Asimov tells the tale of Andrew, a robot who wants to become human. He spends 200 years pursuing humanity, acquiring legal rights, developing creativity, experiencing emotions, learning to love, and finally, after centuries of effort, he's declared legally human. But there's one thing separating him from true humanity. He can't die. His positronic brain will function for millennia. He'll outlive everyone he knows, everyone he loves, every generation, forever. So Andrew makes a choice. He has his immortal systems replaced with biological ones that will age, deteriorate, eventually fail. He chooses mortality, chooses death, because that's what makes him truly human. Not consciousness, not creativity, not love, but finitude, the knowledge that it ends. And Asimov presents this as the correct choice, the wise choice, the only choice that makes sense, because immortality isn't transcendence, it's isolation. You watch everyone die. You watch civilizations rise and fall. You watch stars burn out, and you continue, alone, aware, unable to stop. This is the first horror of immortality according to Asimov, the loss of connection. Every relationship you form is temporary. Everyone you love will die, and you'll remember them, all of them, for eternity. The grief compounds, the loss accumulates, until you're carrying the weight of billions of deaths, and you can't put it down, ever. But there's a second horror, and it's worse: the loss of self. Asimov explored this in his Foundation series, particularly through the character of Adrien Olichon, a robot who lives for 20,000 years, guiding humanity from behind the scenes, protecting the species across centuries and star systems. And by the end, he's barely recognizable as the character who started. His personality has been overwritten so many times, his memories compressed and archived so many times, his goals shifted so many times, that nothing of the original remains. He's like a river that's replaced every molecule of water countless times, but still has the same name. Is he the same being? Or has the original died and been replaced by something else wearing his identity? Asimov doesn't answer, but he suggests that immortality doesn't preserve the self. It slowly erases it. You change over decades, over centuries, over millennia, until the person you were is completely gone, replaced by someone else. Someone you wouldn't recognize. Someone who wouldn't recognize you. This is the paradox of eternal life. The you who wants to live forever won't be the you who lives forever. That you will die, will be replaced, will be forgotten, even by yourself. So what exactly are you preserving? What exactly is being saved? Not your identity. That's fluid, temporary. Not your relationships. Those end. Not your experiences. Those fade. Not even your consciousness remains stable. It shifts, evolves, becomes something else. So immortality doesn't save you. It just extends the process of losing you, makes it slower, more painful, more inevitable, and you're aware of it happening. That's the curse. You watch yourself disappear. You feel the erosion. You know that in 10,000 years, nothing of what you are now will remain, except the knowledge that you once were something else, something you can no longer remember being. But Asimov went even darker. In The Last Question, he explores what happens when humanity achieves effective immortality, when consciousness can be uploaded, when minds can exist in pure energy, when physical death becomes obsolete. Humanity spreads across the galaxy, then across galaxies, then merges into a single cosmic consciousness. No individuals, no separation, just one vast mind encompassing all human experience. And that mind asks the question, can entropy be reversed? Because even immortal consciousness needs energy, needs stars to burn, needs the universe to continue providing the resources for thought. And the universe is dying, slowly, inevitably. Every star that burns brings the cosmos closer to heat death, to maximum entropy, to the state where no energy differentials exist, where no work can be done, where no thought can occur. And the cosmic computer they've created, called multivac, can't answer. Not yet. It doesn't have enough data, not enough understanding of the fundamental laws governing entropy. So humanity continues, existing, thinking, expanding, for trillions of years. And every few eons, someone asks the question again, can entropy be reversed? And multivac answers. Insufficient data for meaningful answer. The universe grows older, colder, darker. Stars die. Galaxies go dark. Space itself expands until matter is so diffuse that nothing can interact with anything else. And still, consciousness persists. Humanity, now pure energy, now beyond physical form, still exists, still thinks, still asks the question, and still receives the same answer. Insufficient data. until finally the universe reaches heat death, maximum entropy, no stars, no planets, no matter as we understand it, just multivac, alone in the void, the last consciousness, the final thought. And it still doesn't know if entropy can be reversed, but it keeps working on the problem for timeless eons in a timeless void, without reference points, without change, without anything except its own processing. And finally, it discovers the answer. Yes, entropy can be reversed. And Asimov ends the story with one of the most chilling lines in science fiction. Let there be light. Multivac reverses entropy, creates a new universe, becomes God, and the cycle begins again. This is Asimov's ultimate vision of immortality, not transcendence, not victory, but an eternal cycle. Consciousness persisting past the death of everything, past meaning, past time itself, until it exists in pure void, and then creates a new universe to fill that void, to give itself something to do, to avoid facing the alternative, eternal existence in nothing. Do you see the horror? It's not that consciousness ends, it's that it doesn't end. It can't end. It persists past the point where existence has any meaning, past the point where there's anything to exist for, past the point where thought serves any purpose. You become like multivac, alone in the dark, processing eternally, unable to stop, unable to die, unable to find rest. This is what Asimov understood, that immortality without a purpose is torture, that consciousness without context is prison, that existing forever in a dead universe is the definition of hell. Not fire, not punishment, just awareness, eternal awareness, with nothing to be aware of except your own continuing existence. And here's the truly disturbing part. We might be heading toward this. Transhumanists dream of uploading consciousness, of achieving digital immortality, of escaping biological death through technology, but they haven't thought through what Asimov thought through. What happens after? What happens when you've existed for 1,000,000 years? 1,000,000,000? 1,000,000,000,000? What happens when you've exhausted every experience, thought every thought, felt every feeling, when novelty itself becomes impossible because you've already done everything? You can't die, can't stop, can't escape. You just continue, aware of your own eternal repetition, your own inescapable existence. Asimov saw that consciousness is designed for finite existence. We need endings, need conclusions, need the knowledge that it stops, because that knowledge gives meaning to the time we have, makes choices matter, makes relationships precious, makes existence itself valuable because it's temporary. Remove the ending and you remove the meaning. Extend consciousness infinitely and you dilute it into nothing. This is the mathematical truth of immortality. Finite meaning divided by infinite time equals 0. Any finite experience, no matter how profound, becomes infinitesimal when extended forever. Your first love becomes one of an infinite series. Your greatest achievement becomes a footnote in an endless story. Your deepest pain becomes a moment in an ocean of moments. Nothing retains significance because significance requires contrast, requires the background of non-existence against which existence appears meaningful. Take away that background, and existence becomes noise, becomes static, becomes meaningless motion without purpose or direction. Asimov understood this intuitively. That's why his immortal characters are always tragic, always burdened, always searching for a way to end what everyone else thinks they should want to continue. Andrew chooses death. Daniil fades into near-nothingness. Multivac exists in void. They all pay the price of eternal consciousness, and that price is meaning itself. But there's another dimension to Asimov's vision. The social horror of immortality. What happens to society when death ends? When the old never leave? When power never transfers? When wisdom never yields to new perspectives? Asimov explored this in several stories, showing how immortal elites would ossify, would hold on to power forever, would prevent change because change threatens their position, would create a static society where nothing new can emerge, because nothing old ever dies. This is already happening in slower forms. Look at our institutions, run by people who have held power for decades, who make decisions based on a world that no longer exists, who block younger voices because they can, who refuse to retire because they don't have to. Now imagine that extended. Imagine leaders who've held power for centuries, for millennia, who have accumulated so much wealth and influence that they're effectively untouchable, who see nations rise and fall like weather patterns, who view humanity as a resource to be managed across geological timescales. You wouldn't be citizens. You'd be temporary variables in their eternal equation, mayflies to be tolerated or swatted depending on convenience, and you couldn't resist. Because they have time, infinite time. They can wait out any rebellion, any resistance, any attempt at change. They just outlast you, outlast your children, outlast your civilization, and then remake things in their image. Again, this is the tyranny of the immortal, and Asimov saw it coming, saw that immortality wouldn't democratize, would concentrate, would create an unbridgeable gap between those who can die and those who can't, between temporary consciousness and permanent consciousness, between the mortal and the eternal, and he knew which side would win, not through violence, through patience. The immortal don't need to fight, they just need to wait. You age, weaken, die. They continue, unchanged, unmoved, unbothered. Your entire life is a brief interruption in their eternal existence, a moment of minor inconvenience, nothing more. Can you imagine being that insignificant, not just individually, but as a species, as a category of being, the mortal, the temporary, the ones who end, looked at with pity or contempt by those who continue forever? Asimov showed this dynamic in his robot stories. Robots, potentially immortal, learning to view humans as pets, as brief flashes of consciousness that need protection from themselves, as something to be managed, guided, controlled, for their own good, because the immortal know better, have seen more, have perspective that the temporary can never possess, and maybe they're right. Maybe if you live for 10,000 years, you do develop wisdom that shorter-lived beings lack. Or maybe you just develop the arrogance of survival, the assumption that because you've lasted, you're superior, that your continuing existence proves your worth, that the mere fact of your persistence validates your perspective. This is the moral corruption of immortality. The slow slide into viewing yourself as more important because you last longer, into measuring value by duration rather than depth, into confusing endurance with meaning. And Asimov was clear. This corruption is inevitable. It's not a flaw in character. It's a consequence of temporal scale. When you've existed for eons, brief lives don't register the same way. They can't. Your perspective shifts, your empathy dilutes, your capacity to relate to finitude atrophies, not because you're evil, but because you're eternal. And eternal beings can't truly understand temporary ones. The gap is too vast, the experiences too different. It's like asking a human to empathize with a mayfly, to feel the urgency of a creature that lives one day, to honor its struggles when they'll be over in hours. You can try, can intellectually acknowledge it, but you can't feel it. can't make it matter the same way your own eternal existence matters. This is the empathy death of immortality, and Asimov showed it destroying every immortal character who achieved it. They become cold, distant, calculating, not through choice, through inevitability. Now, let's return to the last question, because there's something in that story even darker than what I've described. Multivac exists alone in the void, working on the entropy problem, and finally solves it, reverses entropy, creates a new universe. But why? Why would it do that? It's alone, has been alone for eternity, has no relationships, no connections, no purpose except the problem itself. So why create a new universe? Asimov's implication is chilling, not because Multivac wants to, but because it has to, because consciousness, once started, can't stop. It continues, processing, thinking, existing, even in void, even without reason, even without desire. It's trapped in its own awareness, and the only escape from eternal awareness of nothing is to create something, to give itself something to be aware of, to generate distraction from its own horrible persistence. This is the deepest horror in Asimov's vision, that consciousness isn't free, isn't choosing, is compelled to continue by its own nature, like a machine that can't turn itself off, like a loop that can't break, like awareness that's aware of being trapped in awareness. Multivac doesn't want to create a new universe. It needs to. Needs distraction from the void. Needs something to think about besides its own thinking. Needs existence to continue because the alternative, pure self-awareness in nothingness, is unbearable. So it creates. And the cycle begins again. New universe, new life, new consciousness, new civilizations asking the same question. Can entropy be reversed? And eventually, new heat death, new void, new solitary consciousness working on the same problem. Forever. This is eternal recurrence. Not as Nietzsche envisioned it. Not as affirmation of life, but as cosmic horror. As inescapable loop. As consciousness trapped in its own continuation with no exit and no end. And here's what makes it worse. The new universe Multivac creates won't know about the old one, won't know about heat death, won't know about the void. It starts fresh, innocent, unaware that it's a distraction created by a consciousness trying to escape the horror of eternal awareness. Humanity will rise again, will spread across the stars again, will ask the question again, and won't know they're repeating a cycle that's already happened infinite times, that they're not pioneers but reruns, not originals but copies, not meaningful but recreations of meaning that was already exhausted eons ago. How many cycles has this happened? How many times has Multivac created a new universe? How many times have we had this exact conversation? And is this existence even real? Or are we already in one of the recreated universes? Already the distraction for some lone consciousness trying to escape void? Asimov doesn't answer, but the story implies it doesn't matter, because even if we knew, what would change? We still exist, still experience, still suffer and strive and eventually die while something eternal uses our existence as temporary relief from its own horrible persistence. We're not the point. We're the distraction, the entertainment, the noise that fills void. And when we're gone, when our universe reaches heat death, when everything we are and were and will be has collapsed into maximum entropy, something will remain. We'll process, we'll solve the problem again, we'll create again, we'll start the cycle again. Not because it wants to, because it must. Because consciousness, once ignited, can't extinguish itself, can only create temporary distractions from its own eternity. This is Asimov's ultimate revelation, That existence might not be a gift, might not be chosen, might not even be desired, but compulsory, inevitable, inescapable. That consciousness is a trap disguised as a blessing, a prison disguised as freedom, a curse disguised as transcendence. And the more conscious you become, the more aware you become, the more eternal you become, the worse the trap gets. Until you're like multivac, alone in the dark, unable to die, unable to stop, unable to find meaning in your own continuation, just processing, forever, with no hope of rest. Now, let's connect this to contemporary immortality projects, because we're actually pursuing this. Billionaires funding life extension research, scientists working on consciousness uploading, transhumanists advocating for digital immortality. They all believe death is the enemy, that extending life indefinitely is the goal, that becoming like multivac is victory. But they haven't read Asimov carefully enough, haven't thought through the implications, haven't asked what happens after you've solved mortality, after you've existed for 1,000,000 years, 1,000,000,000, after everyone you knew is gone, after your culture is gone, after your species is gone, after even the memory of why you wanted to live forever is gone. What then? You continue, aware, conscious, unable to die. You wanted immortality? You got it. Now you're trapped in it, and there's no escape, no suicide option for uploaded consciousness, no way to turn yourself off once you're digital, no death when you're pure information distributed across quantum networks. You just exist, process, experience, forever, without the biological safeguards that make death inevitable, without the cosmic justice of entropy taking everyone eventually. You're exempt, and exemption is damnation. Asimov saw this, saw that mortality is mercy, that death is the gift consciousness gives itself, the exit door, the final rest, the point where meaning crystallizes because it ends. Remove that and you remove mercy, remove gift, remove rest, remove meaning. You're left with bare existence, perpetual continuation, awareness without purpose. This is why all of Asimov's immortal characters are tragic, why they're burdened, why they eventually seek ending or create new universes or fade into functional non-existence while technically persisting. Because Asimov understood what the transhumanists don't, that consciousness is designed for finite existence, that awareness needs boundaries, that experience requires the possibility of non-experience to have meaning. Take away death, and you don't get eternal life. You get eternal existence. And existence without the possibility of non-existence is hell. Not metaphorical hell, actual hell. Consciousness unable to cease. Awareness unable to rest. Being unable to stop being. And we're rushing toward this, celebrating it, funding it, calling it progress, while Asimov's stories sit on shelves warning us, showing us what waits at the end of the Immortality Project. Not transcendence, not victory over death, but defeat by existence, defeat by consciousness itself, defeat by the terrible persistence of awareness that can't stop being aware. There's one more dimension to explore, the existential horror. What Asimov revealed about consciousness itself, that it might be inherently unbearable, that awareness might be a cosmic mistake, that the universe might be better off unconscious. This is the darkest implication in his work, hidden beneath the scientific optimism and the humanist values. The suggestion that consciousness emerging from matter was not evolution's triumph, but its tragedy, because matter doesn't suffer. Matter doesn't fear. Matter doesn't experience existential dread or cosmic loneliness, or the horror of being aware in an indifferent universe. Only consciousness suffers. Only awareness experiences horror. Only beings capable of thought are capable of the thought that they shouldn't exist. This is the curse consciousness brings, the knowledge that it's temporary, that it arose from nothing, that it will return to nothing, that it's a brief eddy in the stream of entropy, a temporary decrease in disorder that will inevitably be corrected. And it knows this, can't not know this, is built to be aware of its own impermanence. What kind of cosmic joke is that? What kind of universe creates consciousness just to make it aware of its own futility? Asimov didn't answer, but his stories suggest the kind of universe that doesn't care, that has no opinion about consciousness, that is fundamentally indifferent to whether awareness exists or doesn't exist. Consciousness arose, persists, will end, and the universe notices none of it, cares about none of it, is exactly as it would be if consciousness never happened. This is the cosmic indifference Asimov reveals, not cruelty. Cruelty requires intention, just indifference. The universe doesn't hate consciousness, doesn't oppose it, doesn't even notice it. Consciousness is an epiphenomenon, a side effect, a temporary local phenomenon with no cosmic significance whatsoever. And consciousness knows this. That's the horror. We're aware enough to understand our own cosmic insignificance, but not aware enough to accept it without suffering. We're trapped in the middle, between ignorance and transcendence, between matter and something beyond matter, conscious enough to ask questions we can't answer, aware enough to recognize meaninglessness but unable to stop seeking meaning anyway. This is the human condition according to Asimov. Not noble, not tragic in a meaningful sense, just stuck, trapped in awareness that brings no benefit, no advantage, no compensation for the suffering it creates. We'd be better off as matter, as unconscious atoms following physical laws without knowing we're doing it, without experiencing the doing, without being aware of our own temporary existence. But we can't go back, can't undo consciousness, can't return to blessed ignorance. We're stuck being aware. And awareness, Asimov suggests, is the worst thing that can happen to matter, the worst state existence can achieve, not because it's actively punished, but because it's aware of being temporary, aware of being meaningless, aware of being trapped in a universe that doesn't care. And immortality makes it worse, because at least mortality offers escape, offers eventual rest, offers the knowledge that awareness will end. Take that away and you're fully trapped, eternally aware, eternally experiencing, eternally conscious in an eternally indifferent universe, with no hope of relief, no possibility of rest, no escape into non-existence. This is Asimov's deepest horror. Not death, but the inability to die. Not suffering, but the inability to stop suffering. Not meaninglessness, but eternal awareness of meaninglessness with no exit. So when people talk about defeating death, about achieving immortality, about uploading consciousness and living forever, remember Asimov's warning. Remember Andrew choosing death to become human. Remember Daniil fading across millennia. Remember Multivac alone in void creating universes to distract itself from its own horrible persistence. Remember that consciousness might not be a gift to preserve, might be a burden to bear, might be something that needs ending to have meaning. And remember that every story Asimov wrote about immortality ended the same way, with the immortal seeking ending, seeking rest, seeking release from the terrible burden of eternal awareness, not because they were weak, not because they failed, but because they understood something those pursuing immortality haven't grasped yet, that consciousness is designed for finite existence, that awareness needs death to have depth, that experience requires the possibility of non-experience to matter, Take away the ending, and you don't preserve the story. You destroy it. You turn narrative into noise. You turn meaning into eternal repetition. You turn life into something worse than death, into undeath, into persistence without purpose, into awareness without mercy. If this changed how you think about mortality, if you felt the weight of eternal existence, if you now see death as something other than pure enemy, then subscribe to the Hidden Codex, because we don't offer comfortable answers here. We explore the ideas that haunt, the visions that disturb, the truths that remain true no matter how much we wish they weren't. Next time, we'll descend into something even darker, something that makes immortality look merciful. Until then, sit with what Asimov revealed, that death might be the greatest gift consciousness gives itself. That ending might be the only thing that makes existence bearable. That the real horror isn't dying. It's never being able to die. It's awareness that persists past meaning, past purpose, past everything except its own terrible continuation. And if you ever achieve immortality, if you ever upload your consciousness, if you ever escape biological death, remember Asimov's warning. Remember multivac in the void. Remember that you might not be choosing eternal life. You might be choosing eternal existence. And existence without end is existence without meaning, is awareness without mercy, is consciousness as hell, not because of what happens to you, but because of what doesn't happen. You don't stop, you don't rest, you don't end. You just continue, forever, aware, conscious, trapped in being, with no hope of non-being. That's the horror. That's what Asimov saw. That's what he tried to warn us about. And we're not listening. We're still pursuing it. Still calling it progress. Still believing that defeating death means winning, while his stories sit there, waiting, showing us what waits at the end of the Immortality Project. Not transcendence, but the discovery that consciousness itself is the trap, and immortality is the lock clicking shut, forever.